The more things change, the more other things stay the same, unfortunately. Hey guys, MasakoX here. Now, Dragon Ball may not be the most innovative of series out there, nor is it the most thought-provoking, but it is certainly one of the most engaging, iconic, and indeed subversive series going out there in the world of anime. Throughout the land, there are millions of people who would claim to be a Dragon Ball fan, and that number is only going to increase now that Dragon Ball Super has managed to gain just enough traction to be able to stay relevant for a long time coming yet. But one of the biggest criticisms that is actually pointed in Toriyama's direction is that he doesn't exactly treat some of his characters the way he should, given how much of an impact they made to the story. I'm looking at you, Tenshinhan. For example, in my How Did Chi-Chi Cope video, where I talked about Chi-Chi's relationship with Goku, and why on earth she actually chose to stay in that relationship after all the stuff that she's had to put up with, yeah, Goku's not exactly the best husband out there. I managed to source a quote from Toriyama himself, outwardly saying that he didn't like Chi-Chi as a character, and yeah, just take a look at this for yourself. To be honest, I'm not really fond of Chi-Chi as a character. In the middle of the comic, I started to think, I don't want to draw her anymore, and sort of as a way of spiting myself, I decided, you'll have to draw her if she gets married to Goku, so marry them off. So I drew her as a kind of punishment. Yeah, not only is Toriyama making life difficult for himself, but he's also blatantly saying that, I don't like this character, or I don't like that character, because Chi-Chi was meant to be the innocent waif character, and to be all demure and stuff like that, but Toriyama has gone on record many times saying he's not very good at the whole romance love shtick, so he kind of gave up. I kind of feel bad for him, he shouldn't have to do stuff like that to himself. So in terms of her character development, it's not been that great since Dragon Ball Z began, but Goku could arguably be the least developed character in the entire show, and he's the main character. Maybe Toriyama's going for a Persona-esque type thing, or maybe he pioneered what Persona does, because you know in Persona, the main character is just a piece of cardboard and you make of it what you will. Yeah, he is essentially the same happy-go-lucky guy as he was when we first saw him in the first episode of Dragon Ball. You would be right in thinking that, but I actually think he has changed somewhat. Hear me out. Now remember when we first saw Goku in Dragon Ball, he was been completely cut off from the outside world for years after his grandpa Gohan died. So he had to kind of just soldier out there on his own, find food, entertain himself, and just kind of roll with it, improvise, all that kind of stuff. But when Bulma came into his life, he was just hurled in there headfirst to a bustling city metropolis world and just had to go like, overloading stimulation. But out of all that, he was introduced to one of the things he absolutely adores now the most: tournaments. Contests where you get to fight other strong guys and maybe actually learn a thing or two from them. As a byproduct of tournaments and martial arts and stuff like that, actually refining his skills, you actually begin to learn an instinctive sensation of discipline, respect, honor, all those kind of things. You know about control. That's something that Goku didn't have, and he did gain over the years as a kid. I mean, of course, he is still way below average when it comes to social skills, but in the world of Dragon Ball and being the main character and fighting strong villains, there's not really much of a priority for that. There's not exactly a villain in Dragon Ball that harbors itself on good manners. But having said that, you are also right to say that Goku really hasn't changed much at all. He has certainly not changed as much as other characters have. In fact, I made an entire video detailing about why I thought Vegeta is the most developed character in the entire Dragon Ball franchise. From OG, Z, GT, Super, yeah, good old Jeets has changed the most, and I'm glad that happened. Take this quote from the Super Q&A interview Toriyama did back in 2014 as an example. Vegeta, whose pride had been deeply wounded, sought help from Bulma, and little by little, his ruthless personality changed. Nowadays, you certainly might be able to say that. On the other hand, Goku might not have a sense of family members like Gohan and Chi-Chi, except as one of his companions. At first, he was just a self-entitled prince of all 2.5 Saiyans who actually sought pleasure from terrorizing those weaker than him, and without anyone else knowing, he was subjugated by Lord Frieza. So, you know, nobody had to know that, but for other people, I'm the best ever, yeah. Nowadays, he's moved on from such ideas as conquering planets and blowing civilizations up. He has a loving family, a healthy lifestyle, and is arguably the second strongest character in all of Dragon Ball, or at least one of the mortals, so that's not bad. That is something to be impressed by. If you think there's an even more developed character in Dragon Ball, then do leave your suggestion in the comments, I'd love to hear. But back to the main topic at hand. Who is less developed as a character than Goku? It's not exactly a high bar to reach. In fact, for the longest time, you might actually say that Master Roshi is one of the least developed characters in Dragon Ball. That guy is essentially the same person as he was when we first saw him in the 3rd episode of Dragon Ball. His passion for the ladies was something no other character could match. However, after weeks of development, that has certainly changed, and come episode 107 of Dragon Ball Super, Roshi's a different guy. He has managed to mostly best his wicked ways. He did have a little bit of a slip in episode 105, but on the whole, he actually managed to carry himself really well and take out quite a lot of people in the Tournament of Power, and he conducted himself in a very honourable and respectful and mature manner. That is a lot of change, and really, relatively speaking, Dragon Ball's been around for 30 years, this all happened in a couple of months. That's quite jarring. It just goes to show that even though you're a couple hundred years old, you can still learn a thing or two when it comes to discipline, principles, and honour. I'm so happy for Roshi. I was really worried, and I'm pretty sure that you were too, that Master Roshi's maturing was just leading up to a really big punchline. And no, he's pretty much the same guy. But I really think that he has changed his ways. I think this is not just a gag. So, okay, who else? Well, usually it's the humans that have been the least developed in terms of Super, so you could say that Yamcha is the least developed character in Dragon Ball. You might even be able to say that he's actually gone backwards since when he first started. When we first saw him in Dragon Ball, he was a really intimidating desert bandit. If you were out in the desert and you didn't know where to go, if Yamcha accosted you, all of your valuables, everything else, it would have all been taken and Puar would have just been his lackey. So long as you were a guy. If you were a girl, then, Yamcha's pretty much just a wet blanket. By the time we got to the end of Dragon Ball and a little bit of the way into Z before the Saiyan saga really began, Yamcha had really become quite the accomplished young man. He had Bulma as a steady girlfriend, access to riches from Capsule Corp. He actually changed his ways. He looked quite suave and strong and confident, and he was even a pro baseball player. In terms of character development, that's not bad at all. Good going, Yamcha. However, one little Cyberman just changed Yamcha's life for the worse. By the time you get to where we are in Super, Yamcha is just living in a bedsit flat, which is looking kinda dilapidated. Puar is his only source of company, and his baseball career, it's pretty much non-existent. But when you come into the argument of least developed character, you could argue saying that Yamcha has at least had stuff happen to him, and the character he was is not the character he is now. And he's had a lot of stuff in between. We have to look at a character who has really not changed much in comparison. So maybe we can talk about Tenshinhan and by proxy Chaozu. That's a viable option. At first you might be thinking, Masako, what are you doing? Didn't you watch Dragon Ball? Tenshinhan started off wanting to be a world-class assassin in the footsteps of mercenary Tao. That's pretty bad, and considering that Tao is really twisted and quite sinister, yeah, that's not exactly a positive role model. From where he wanted to be to where he is now is quite a sizable step. He is an honourable fighter, very strict, very disciplined, instead of just being a desperate teenager who wanted to go like, I want to be a big assassin just like you, mercenary Tao. I mean, that's not exactly Tenshinhan, but, you know, I bet he was thinking it. So yeah, I've got to give credit where credit's due. Tenshinhan, good on you. You decided not to be a bad guy. But then when you actually consider Tenshinhan from the beginning of Dragon Ball Z onwards, not really much happens. He doesn't really change much throughout Z, or even GT, or even some of Super. Really, what's the difference? Okay, he's got a dojo now. Okay, great. Okay, you're starting up a business and a dojo. Alright, good. But in terms of personality, you've not really done much. You haven't found a romantic interest, you've not really set up a home, you've not really got anyone else in your life. It's just you and Chaozu, the same as always. He's not even changed his physical appearance all that much, and clothes don't count in this situation. But for those Tenshinhan fans that might be thinking I'm being harsh on him, I do understand the whole point of Tenshinhan in terms of Toriyama's aspect. He is meant to be a stereotype of all the serious martial art fighters that we saw in kung fu films from the 70s and 80s. He's meant to be the only serious character in the show, and many times in Dragon Ball Z Abridged, we have pointed that out. And he goes out of his way to demonstrate this many times. But yeah, all of this parodying and subversion comes at a big cost. You can't exactly develop as a character of your own. You just got to be kind of harboring other people's characters and other people's actions. You are just a vessel, not really a character. So then you could say if Tenshinhan's not developed much, then Chaozu's developed even less. He is to Tenshinhan what Puar is to Yamcha, just a sidekick, a lackey, a minion. Someone to basically say, wow, Tenshinhan or Yamcha or whatever, you're so cool. I mean, it's great that they have a companion and all and they're not alone in the world, but it does mean that that cohort gets even less development than the actual character they're following. And in the actual case of Tenshinhan and Chaozu, oh boy. But that's not their fault though. Toriyama wrote them as sidekicks, and in the world of sidekicks, they don't really get much of a chance to shine on their own merit. In some cases nowadays, they might get their own episode to actually focus on their flashbacks and origins and lifestyles, but back in the world of Dragon Ball in the 80s and 90s, that didn't really happen. Now, speaking of sidekicks, I think we might actually have found the perfect candidate for the least developed character other than Goku, and I'm afraid that it comes from the Son family camp, and I think you know what I'm going to say. Goten. Again, it's not his fault though. Toriyama wrote Goten to simply be the sidekick, see where I'm going here, of Kid Trunks, who is vastly more popular. And why is that, Masako? Well, future Trunks have been extremely popular during the Perfect Cell and the whole Android saga, so when he had to go back to the future, it did leave a really big void, and Toriyama and the editors had to fill it some way. But wait, we have Baby Trunks. If there's a time skip, we could bring him in as a kid, and the kids who watch might actually find him relatable. Ooh, I sense profit, cha-ching. So okay, we've got Kid Trunks, so yeah, we can't have just him doing stuff on his own, so let's have it, so that means Chi-Chi had another kid in the 7-year time scale, Gohan, Goku, Goten? Yes, okay, now let's just have them have wacky adventures. But there has been a drawback to all that demographic chasing though. It has meant that Goten and Trunks have basically just stayed the same ever since we first saw them in the Buu saga. They've not really aged. They've aged numerically, but in terms of overall appearance, not really. But in Super they are addressing this. Kid Trunks has actually had quite a little bit of development ever since Future Trunks came back into the story and basically told Kid Trunks to grow a pair. And now Kid Trunks is almost in his teens, we are actually going to be seeing, you know, relationships coming into play. Present Mai, Kid Trunks, it's all been alluded quite blatantly too, so, you know, Trunks has got a girlfriend. Goten, he's got a friend. And I don't think that Goten was really thought well of from the very beginning, because Toriyama, when he actually first conceived of the Buu saga, was only doing so out of editorial pressure to keep going because of the money. So you could say that his apathy for the entire franchise at the time was encapsulated in Goten's presence. But yeah, it all comes back down to the fact that Goku is not exactly a high bar to jump over when it comes to character development. He has changed, but not by much. I mean, that could all change by the time we get to the end of Dragon Ball Super, but as of now, Goku's character is just treading water. And in this situation, when it comes to Goten, it seems very much like father like son. It is a real shame, but I have to admit that maybe this is for the best, because if Toriyama can't think of anything better to do with Goten, then it's just best to do nothing than risk alienating anyone who is a Goten fan by making him doing something out of character just for the sake of like, oh hey, he's different now. So you gotta remember that. So what do you guys think? Do you think there's another character who is less developed than Goku out there? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!